Glasgow Green, summer 1924. After the football match ended, Billy Fullerton walked alone through the park. 21 years old, Protestant, Bridgeton boy. He did not see the Kent Star gang until they surrounded him. Ross Prete and his Catholic fighters from Calton carried hammers. They beat Fullerton to the ground, hammers cracking against bone, blood on grass. When they finished, Fullerton lay unconscious. The Kent Star walked away laughing. They thought they had broken him. They were wrong. That beating did not destroy Billy Fullerton. It created him. Within months, he formed the Billy Boys, 800 strong, the biggest gang Glasgow had ever seen, all because the Kent Star made one mistake. They let him live. This is the story of the gang war that defined 1930s Glasgow. The Kent Star versus the Billy Boys. Catholic Calton versus Protestant Bridgeton. The gang that accidentally created their worst enemy. And the 15-year blood feud that followed. The Kent Star formed in the early 1920s in Calton, East End, Glasgow. Catholic territory, working-class tenements, poverty, unemployment, sectarian hatred running deep through every street. Calton sat directly adjacent to Bridgeton. Protestant territory. The two districts shared borders but lived in different worlds. Catholics in Calton, Protestants in Bridgeton, and between them, generations of religious hatred. The Kent Star took their name from Kent Street in Calton, their headquarters, their territory. Ross Prete led them, a fighter, a Catholic loyalist, a man who believed Calton belonged to Catholics, and anyone who crossed that line deserved razors and hammers. In the early 1920s, the Kent Star numbered in the dozens, not hundreds yet. But they were growing, recruiting unemployed young men, teenagers with no prospects, men in their 20s with families but no work, the same profile as every Glasgow gang. Desperation turned into violence. The Kent Star fought Protestant gangs, the Derry Boys, early Billy Fullerton supporters, anyone who represented the other side. Religion was not just belief, it was identity, it was territory, it was blood. They used razors like every Glasgow gang, open straight blades, slash the face, leave scars, the Glasgow smile. But they also used hammers, blunt force trauma, break bones, crack skulls. Hammers were their signature weapon, and in summer 1924 they used them on Billy Fullerton. Billy Fullerton grew up in Bridgeton, Protestant, working class. By 1924 he was 21 years old and already known as a fighter, not a gang leader yet, just another young Protestant who hated Catholics and loved a fight. The attack at Glasgow Green changed everything. After a football match, Fullerton walked through the park alone. The Kent Star saw their chance. Ross Prete and his fighters surrounded him. They carried hammers hidden under coats. They beat him to the ground, hammers smashing into his body, his head, his ribs. He fell unconscious. The Kent Star thought they had killed him, or at least crippled him for life. They walked away satisfied. But Fullerton survived, hospitalized, broken bones, concussion, rage. When he recovered, he made a decision. If the Catholics could organize gangs, so could the Protestants. If the Kent Star could attack him with hammers, he would build an army that made the Kent Star look small. Within months, Billy Fullerton formed the Billy Boys. He recruited from every Protestant area in Bridgeton and beyond. Unemployed shipyard workers, teenagers, veterans from World War I, anyone who hated Catholics and wanted to fight. The Billy Boys grew fast, 50 members, then 100, then 300. By the late 1920s, Billy Fullerton commanded 800 men, the biggest gang Glasgow had ever seen, all born from one hammer attack by the Kent Star. The Kent Star realized their mistake too late. They had created a monster. The gang they thought they had broken now dwarfed them in size and organization. But Ross Prete refused to back down. The Kent Star recruited aggressively to match the Billy Boys. By the late 1920s, the Kent Star could raise as many followers as the Billy Boys, not 800 permanent members. But when they called for fighters, hundreds of Calton Catholics answered. Young men, older men, anyone who wanted to defend Catholic territory against Protestant invasion. The two gangs became mirror images. Billy Boys in Bridgeton, Kent Star in Calton, both armed with razors and hammers, both driven by sectarian hatred, both willing to kill for territory and religion. The wars began almost immediately after the Billy Boys formed. Street battles, ambushes, raids into each other's territory, razor slashes, hammer blows, bodies left bleeding on cobblestones. The Billy Boys marched through Bridgeton with flutes and drums, hundreds of men in formation, singing Protestant songs, waving Union Jacks, a show of strength designed to intimidate. When they marched near Calton borders, the Kent Star mobilized. Ross Prete would gather his fighters at Kent Street. Hundreds of Catholics armed with razors and hammers. They would meet the Billy Boys at territorial borders. Sometimes both sides would stand and shout threats across the street. Other times, violence erupted instantly. Razors flashing in lamplight, hammers swinging, glass bottles shattering against heads, blood spraying across cobblestones. The fights lasted minutes before police arrived. Both gangs would scatter into tenement closes and alleys, leaving wounded behind, leaving blood and broken glass. The Kent Star specialized in ambushes. They knew Calton better than any Protestant gang. Every close, every escape route, every rooftop. When Billy Boys ventured into Calton, the Kent Star attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. 20 Kent Star members emerging from doorways, another 30 dropping from tenement windows, hammers swinging before the Billy Boys could react. Ross Prete led from the front, fighting with his men, razor in one hand, hammer in the other. But the Billy Boys had numbers. When the Kent Star attacked, Fullerton would send reinforcements. Wave after wave of Protestant fighters flooding into Calton. Eventually, the Kent Star would retreat, back to Kent Street, back to their safe territory. But they never surrendered. The most famous clash came when Ross Prete was thrown headfirst through a plate glass window by Billy Boys members. A revenge attack for the 1924 Glasgow Green beating. Prete survived, but carried scars for life. The message was clear. The Billy Boys had not forgotten, and they never would. The violence escalated through the late 1920s. Assaults, stabbings, occasional murders. The newspapers called it gang warfare. The politicians called it a crisis. But nothing stopped the fighting. The Kent Star and Billy Boys were locked in a blood feud that neither side could win or walk away from. By the early 1930s, Glasgow was drowning in gang violence. The Billy Boys and Kent Star, the Norman Conks and Beehive Boys, the Redskins and Southside Stickers, hundreds of gang members clashing in public, razors and hammers everywhere, shopkeepers terrorized, women and children caught in crossfire. December the 22nd, 1931. Percy Sillitoe walked into Glasgow Police Headquarters as the new Chief Constable. His mission was clear: destroy every gang, all of them. He studied the territories. Billy Boys in Bridgeton, Kent Star in Calton, Norman Conks, Kelly Boys, every gang mapped and targeted. Sillitoe did not care about religion. He did not care about territory. He cared about results. His strategy was brutal: purge corrupt police officers, recruit massive Highland giants as new constables, create mounted police units, use paid informants in every pub, and most importantly, fight back with overwhelming force. When the Billy Boys and Kent Star clashed in the streets, Sillitoe's police charged in, mounted officers on horses, Highland constables swinging truncheons, no more standing back and watching. The police became a third army in the gang wars. The Kent Star and Billy Boys both faced the same enemy now. Ross Prete and his fighters found themselves outnumbered by police who were bigger and better armed. Billy Fullerton's 800 members meant nothing when mounted police trampled through their formations. Sillitoe also coordinated harsh sentences. Gang members arrested during fights faced years in prison. Judges who had been lenient were pressured to change. The message was clear: gang membership equals prison. Ross Prete was arrested. So was Billy Fullerton. Both gang leaders faced assault charges. Both spent time in prison. Their empires crumbled without them. The Kent Star fell first. Smaller than the Billy Boys, less organized, when Ross Prete went to prison, the gang fractured. Some members joined other Catholic gangs. Others left Glasgow entirely. By the mid-1930s, the Kent Star had collapsed. The Billy Boys lasted longer because of their size, but even Fullerton could not hold 800 members together under Sillitoe's crackdown. Arrests, prison sentences, police raids, informants reporting every gathering. By 1936, the Billy Boys were broken. Then came World War II. Billy Fullerton and many former gang members enlisted or were conscripted. They fought Nazis instead of Catholics. Ross Prete and surviving Kent Star members did the same. The gang war that had defined their lives ended not with razors, but with enlistment papers. Some died on foreign battlefields, others returned to a Glasgow that had changed. The sectarian hatred remained, but the gang culture had shifted. Younger gangs formed, but they lacked the size and organization of the Billy Boys and Kent Star. By the 1950s, both gangs were memories. Ross Prete and Billy Fullerton lived quiet lives. The men who had commanded hundreds of fighters in bloody street wars became ordinary citizens. The razor scars remained. The memories remained. But the gangs were gone. The Kent Star left almost no records. No folklore, no songs. They were eclipsed by the Billy Boys in every history book. Billy Fullerton became famous. Ross Prete was forgotten. But the truth is more complicated. The Kent Star created the Billy Boys. That hammer attack in 1924 sparked the formation of Glasgow's biggest gang. Without the Kent Star, there might never have been 800 Billy Boys marching through Bridgeton. The gang war between Kent Star and Billy Boys represented the peak of Glasgow's sectarian gang culture. Catholic versus Protestant, Calton versus Bridgeton, hammers and razors, hundreds of men willing to kill for religion and territory. Percy Sillitoe destroyed both gangs. But he could not destroy the memory. The stories passed down through families, the scars on old men's faces, the knowledge that for 15 years, Glasgow's East End belonged to the gangs, not the law. This was the Kent Star versus the Billy Boys, the gang that accidentally created their worst enemy, and the blood feud that only ended when police horses trampled through both sides and prison cells filled with fighters from Calton and Bridgeton alike.